Pete Docter is arguably the most integral part of Pixar. He was the 10th employee hired all the way back in 1990, and he started working there the day after his graduation. He was an important part of the story team for Toy Story and has been working at Pixar for all this time. He's always been part of Pixar's Brain Trust, a group of people who talk about all the various projects going on in Pixar at all times, so it's safe to say that he has had a hand in pretty much every single Pixar film. And since 2018, he's been acting as the current Chief Creative Officer at Pixar. In the past 25 years, Pete Docter has directed 4 feature-length films: Monsters Inc., Up, Inside Out, and Soul. All masterpieces in my book, and I don't think I'm alone in that thought. Pete Docter has made a name for himself by making animated films that appeal to kids but deal with surprisingly heavy subject matters in a way that kids can still understand but are still meaningful for people of all ages. But there is one movie that really inspired Pete Docter and really sets the stage for all of his films, and that movie is Paper Moon. Paper Moon is a black and white road comedy drama from 1973, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It stars the real-life father and daughter duo of Ryan and Tatum O'Neal. The film is set in Depression-era USA, and it follows a con artist, Moses Bray, who ends up saddled with a young girl, Addie, who just lost her mother. Mose is supposed to drive her up to her aunt's home in Missouri, but he's very reluctant to do it, so they end up conning people all the way there. Paper Moon is considered a classic for a good reason. It's a wonderful story about 2 unlikely characters getting into all kinds of hijinks. It's a lot of fun, but it also has a lot of emotional weight as well. Tatum O'Neal actually won an Oscar for her performance in the film, making her the youngest person ever to win a competitive Academy Award only at the age of 10, a record she still holds to this day. Paper Moon is currently the 89th highest rated movie on Letterboxd with a rating of 4.4. But maybe most importantly, at least for the purposes of this video, it's one of Pete Docter's favorite films. Pete Docter first watched Paper Moon in around 1997 for reference when developing Monsters Inc. As he says in a book by Robert K. Elder, "I like the more character-driven stuff, and Paper Moon brought that home for me in a way that I had not seen in live action, really focusing on the whole story just about characters. It was almost theatrical in the same way you might see a stage show, because you're locked in a room. It's got to be about characters, and yet it was so cinematic, a film that couldn't be done in any other medium. It just kinda blew my socks off." During the development of Monsters Inc., Docter had his first child. He was a huge workaholic and just wanted to spend all his time at work animating. But then his focus started to shift as he suddenly also wanted to spend time with his kid. I think this new dynamic for him, paired with the viewing of Paper Moon, greatly affected him. Docter goes on to say that the main thing he took from the movie was how it handled and focused on the characters and their relationships. And in the most overt sense, all of Docter's movies are about a main character who suddenly has to take care of a child, just how in Paper Moon, Mose had to take care of Addie. In Monsters Inc., you have Sully and Boo. In Up, you have Carl and Russell. Then in Inside Out, you have the Emotions and Riley. And finally in Soul, you have Joe and 22. So even if Docter originally watched Paper Moon as inspiration and research for his first film, it clearly resonated with him in a big way, as traces of it can be seen in all of his work. So let's take a look, starting with Monsters Inc. is about a city of monsters who go through closet doors to scare children to harness their screams as energy. Our main protagonists are Sully, the top scarer at Monsters Inc., and his assistant and best friend Mike. One day, a child named Boo goes through the doors and comes to the world of monsters, and it's up to Sully to get her back without anyone noticing, because the monsters believe that children are toxic. So, very clearly, we have an adult who, through coincidence, has to take care of a child and take them home. In both movies, our main characters first try to do things the easy way, but fail. In Paper Moon, Mose tries to just send Addie to Missouri on a train, but Addie refuses to go on it because Mose owes her money. Similarly, Sully first tries to just put Boo back through her door, but Boo refuses to stay in. In Paper Moon, their schemes are going better than they thought. They are making more money and it's mostly because of Addie. So Mose realizes that maybe it's not a bad idea to keep her around longer, prolonging the trip to Missouri for his own benefit, which Addie doesn't have a problem with, as she's also enjoying the scheming and having a parental figure. Throughout the film, Mose and Addie keep on flipping between mutually beneficial and somewhat of an antagonistic relationship. But in Monsters, Sully becomes protective of Boo very early on. What takes Mose an entire movie to learn takes Sully only a few hours, as he starts to care for Boo and prioritizes taking her home. Sully kind of properly starts his journey where Mose ended his. Mike actually takes the antagonistic role of Mose more in the movie, as he's constantly trying to tell Sully to just get rid of the kid. But Sully is going against everybody, trying to take care of Boo, no matter the consequences to him or others around him. In Monsters Inc., Pete Docter basically asks what if the adult in Paper Moon actually cared about the kid early on and the movie would be about taking her home. It uses the narrative of a man who is thrown out of their day-to-day life by the sudden arrival of a kid, but wanting to be there for them. A situation that he really found himself in at the time. But what about the Pixar movie that dared to ask, what if feelings had feelings? Inside Out is about 11-year-old Riley and the emotions inside her mind. As Riley's family moves from Minnesota to San Francisco, Riley misses her old home and has a hard time adjusting. As Riley starts to lose herself, the emotions, joy and sadness embark on an unlikely journey through Riley's mind in an attempt to fix her. Out of the 4 child characters in Pete Docter's movies, Riley is the closest comparison to Addie, especially as she becomes more alienated. They both make their own plans without the approval of their parental figure. Addie deciding to get rid of the woman Mose is interested in, and Riley deciding to run away. Like Addie, Riley becomes very assertive and starts to even break the law, stealing money from her mom's purse for bus fare. They both make these plans because they don't feel that the adults are paying enough attention to them anymore, so this is their way of taking care of themselves. You can even draw parallels between them, in that at the end of Paper Moon, as Mose finally leaves Addie at her aunt's place, Addie decides to run away from her new home and go back to what she knows, conning together with Mose, just like Riley decides to run away from her new home and back to her old one. Of course, the meaning behind these decisions is very different, as in Paper Moon it is the cathartic ending to the whole story, as the characters decide to stick together in the end, and in Inside Out it is the worst possible thing Riley could do, giving the film a lot of its tension. Inside the mind, joy is quoted more as the child and sadness as the adult. Joy, just like Addie, keeps taking unnecessary risks against the wishes of the adult. For example, when Joy decides to take a shortcut through abstract thought, kinda like when Addie makes Mose kinda sheriff, even when he's trying to back away from the situation. Later in Inside Out, to mirror the ending of Paper Moon, Joy and Addie both chase after Sadness and Mose respectively, when they have decided that they don't need them anymore. Finally putting focus and meaning on our main characters learning to appreciate each other and what they can bring to each other's lives, even when they originally couldn't see it. You might have wondered why I'm not going through the movies in chronological order and talk about Up before Inside Out. Well, that's because Up and Pete Docter's latest film Soul share a lot of similarities between each other, especially how they connect to Paper Moon. So let's get into Up and Soul. Up is about Carl, a 70-year-old man whose wife has passed away. They bonded on their shared love of adventure and always dreamed of going to a place called Paradise Falls. Inspired by a childhood drawing, Carl decides to transport their house via helium balloons there. Accidentally tagging along for the ride is 8-year-old Russell, who's trying to earn a merit badge by helping Carl. Soul is about a middle-aged Joe who has finally gotten his chance to play with a respected jazz band. But he falls into a manhole and dies. Unable to accept his death, he ends up in the Great Before. There, he becomes a mentor to an unborn soul 22 who doesn't want to go to Earth, as they still need to fill out their personality on their Earth pass with a spark, but they have never been able to get one as they don't want to go to Earth to live a life. I'd actually say that even though Pete Docter originally watched Paper Moon for Monsters Inc., it has the most connection with Up and Soul. Russell is in age closest to 9-year-old Addie, but Russell's helpful and cheerful demeanor is quite opposite to Addie's cold and reserved personality. 22, on the other hand, chooses to sound like a middle-aged white woman.
I just use this voice because it annoys people.
It's very effective.
So she's closer to Addie in personality, though 22 is definitely a bit more overtly funny and mischievous. Carl, Joe and Mose all get saddled with the kid, and after an initial annoyment, they use them for their own gain. Mose goes immediately to extort the people who caused Eddie's mother's death. Carl makes Russell help him track the house to the desired spot in Paradise Falls, and Joe wants to fill 22's Earth Pass and take it for himself. In Seoul, Joe manages to cheat his way back to Earth, but accidentally falls into a cat by his hospital bed, and 22 ends up in his body. Joe then has to guide 22 into getting him ready for his jazz concert in the evening so that he can look presentable once he gets his body back. This makes their dynamic very similar to the dynamic in Paper Moon, where just like how Mose gets Eddie mixed into his life, Joe gets 22 mixed up in his. 22 is basically a newborn child in Joe's body, as they have never had a physical form before. But due to 22's unfamiliarity with the normal human customs, they end up connecting with people in much more meaningful ways than Joe ever did. Joe only ever really cared about jazz, so he basically only talked about that to everybody else. 22 instead actually ends up saying more meaningful things and listens to other people. Even if the dynamic starts off as Joe guiding and taking care of 22 as he is the expert on his own life as well as just having a body, it basically evolves into 22 teaching Joe how to truly live life. Kinda how in Paper Moon, Mose is the professional con man, but Eddie seems to almost be better at it than him. Then in Up and Paper Moon, Russell and Eddie are both missing a parental figure. Eddie's mother has passed away, so over the course of the movie, she starts to look at Mose as a father figure. Russell still has his parents, although his father doesn't pay attention to him. He did promise Russell that he would come to the merit badge ceremony, which is why Russell is so adamant on getting the helping the elderly badge. He's very clearly looking at Carl as a father figure from the get-go, but Carl is very unwilling to accept that role, just like Mose. Though Mose does go towards that idea more at points throughout the film than Carl, who only realizes that by the climax of the movie. All three movies resolve with the adult realizing how important the child is to them and that they have been selfish. It's a bit less apparent in Paper Moon, as that basically happens only at the very end of the movie, but in Up and Soul, Carl and Joe realized this just in time for the third act climax. Basically, Carl, Joe and Mose all had tunnel vision, only seeing their ultimate goal and not caring about anything else but achieving it. By the end of the movie, because of the kids, they realized that the goal itself really wasn't that important, maybe even pointless, but the journey there was the true meaning. Now, just to clarify, the purpose of this video is not to say that all of Pete Docter's movies are just rip-offs of Paper Moon. That's ridiculous. But once you know it's one of his favorite movies, it's interesting to see its DNA in all of his work. From the dynamics between the main characters, to their journeys, and even the messages of the stories. All 5 movies are ultimately about the importance of human connection. If you only care about yourself, you will never reach the same heights you could if you also help others. Together we can lift ourselves up, inside and out, and fill our souls with monsters? Incorporate? No, what? This doesn't make sense. Whatever. And join me next time as I talk about how all of Michael Bay's movies are actually just retellings of Bambi.